Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another What I'm Reading Right Now video here on the channel. It is bright and early in the morning on a Tuesday. The sun is coming through the window and blinding me. I don't know what the lighting's doing, but if we don't film now, we never will. This is the series where I talk about what I have been reading, what I'm currently reading, and what I should be reading next. Let's get going, I guess. What's my normal intro? Why can't I remember anything today? I'm gonna close a window. The dogs of the neighbourhood are evidently very excited that it is no longer a bank holiday weekend. Anyway, I finished 7 books in the 2 weeks since we last spoke. Let's talk about them. I finished The Daughters of Izdihar by Hadia Asbai, followed by the sequel, The Weavers of Alamaxa. This is the Alamaxa duology, so named because it takes place in the city of Alamaxa. I've talked about this a fair amount before. Elemental powers, fights for women's suffrage and women's rights, generally speaking. It's a good time. I was surprised by how much I liked book 2. I was worried it was going to have that classic duology problem of feeling like 2 books smushed into one. But actually, I think because this was sold as a duology, it was planned out pretty well. Book 2 does actually feel pretty short, I guess, in comparison to other sequels that I have read. I liked it. I think it did exactly what I needed it to do, which is be emotionally resonant, fair amount of elemental powers fun, and a satisfying ending without feeling Deus Ex Machina, which is what I wanted, and I did enjoy it. Would I recommend that everyone and their mum go out and buy a copy? I would say I would maybe have read it from the library if I hadn't had review copies, is where I'm going with it. I don't know if it's a need to have in your collection kind of book. But as we know, I don't feel that about many books anymore, so I'm probably not the best one to judge. I finished Translation State by Anne Leckie. This is the next most recent of the spin-off books in the Imperial Raj trilogy. It feels like ages ago that I finished this, so excuse me if I don't remember everything about it. I actually really enjoyed this. I thought it was really good. Might be my favourite of the series. I think it just had some really interesting themes and ideas around aliens and culture and some mystery elements that were very interesting, and the kind of the politics and identity politics that this series as a whole has got into multiple times was very enjoyable. I think it definitely picked up towards the end. It was fairly slow to start, as all of them have been, but I really liked reading it. Or I should say, I listened to this on audiobook and I had a good time. I don't know how I would have felt had I read it physically. I finished my reread via audiobook of Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. This is if you haven't heard of it, it's a science fiction necromantic adventure. I actually liked this a lot on a reread. I think Gideon is the one that has really cemented itself for me in my mind, probably because I've read it the largest number of times. I just think it's enjoyable. I still think that it is overly complicated, and I'll come on to that more when I talk about Harrow and in my eventual video, but I did think it was a good time, so there's that. My T. Kingfisher read-along continues, as it will for most of the year. We read Illuminations, or we are reading Illuminations. If you've not finished it yet, you're not behind. This is another book, I would say similar in style to Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, where we have a young main character dealing with a magical issue. In this we have the Morettini family. I might be saying that wrong. It was vaguely Italian sounding name. It's not hugely important. They paint magical illuminations, which are specific paintings that do specific things, like keep rats away from your pantry, for example. And our main character is one of this family. She is not great at doing illuminations yet, and she unleashes a sort of evil thing into the world, and the book is about trying to fix that issue. You know, very classic, almost very classic middle grade plot. It's not a middle grade book, but it feels very classic middle grade plot to me. I had very similar feelings about this as I had to Wizard's Guide in terms of length. I think it's a really interesting one in terms of length and pacing, in that it kind of feels like a short story that's been increased in length. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's just worth bearing in mind. The through line is usually something vaguely spooky and scary in these, and I think in this case we didn't really have that element. There's not that same grotesqueness to it that there was in other books. It's felt much more light-hearted in a lot of ways, though the stakes are very high. Yeah, it's a small story, but a good one. I liked it. I won't say it's my favourite T. Kingfisher we've read, but it wasn't anything that I expected, and therefore I liked it a lot. The last 2 I do have books to hold up, because these are the books that I've managed not to lose in the intervening weeks. I finished a reread of The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. This is a reimagining of that classic book, The Island of Dr. Moreau, but about Dr. Moreau's daughter, unsurprisingly, based on the title. I like this. I think it's a good book. I don't think it's Sylvia Moreno Garcia's strongest. I suspect that might be because I don't know the island of Dr. Moreau at all, really. I still have a problem with this that I will talk about more in my video, but essentially there's a twist element to it that I don't think works very well, and that's not a bad book, just not my favourite, and I don't know if it will make it through my next unhaul, just because I'm not super keen to read it again if I was going to reread Sylvia Moreno Garcia, you know? But a book that I would reread thousands of times is A Restless Truth by Freya Marske. Sapphic Knives Out on a Boat. Who doesn't want a murder mystery gay boat book? And it's me. I want that. I want it. I'm not the person who doesn't want it. I'm the person who does. This is the sequel to A Marvelous Light. You do need to read them in order for things to make a lot of sense. I like this a lot. I think it's just a lovely time. I had a great time reading it. It goes by really fast. It's spicy. If you don't like spicy books, this won't be for you, and the opposite of that. And yeah, I just had the best time. I love it so much. I've talked about it a billion times, so I shan't dwell. I only have one current read that I'm working on because it is a new week and I haven't started anything yet, but that is Harrow the Ninth, the sequel to Gideon the Ninth. I think like 60% of the way through that. I was busy this weekend, so no audiobook happened. Harrow making a lot more sense on a reread, which is helpful. I'm glad that it is. I would be concerned if it wasn't. I will say the only reason I am enjoying this as much as I am is because I looked up a summary where someone had explained everything on Reddit and I'm reading it with that summary in mind. If I didn't have that, there's absolutely no way. I would be so confused still. But because I have been told what is happening, I'm enjoying what is happening. More on that when I make a video on that series, I think. Probably. We'll get into it. We'll get into it then. What am I reading this week? I am polishing off a bunch of these series that I'm rereading. I'll be reading Power Unbound, the third book in that Last Binding trilogy. That's what the trilogy is called. That's a reread. I'm really looking forward to it. It's my first reread of that third book. Just gonna have a wonderful time with that one. Nonna the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, the third book in the Locked Tomb series. When does the fourth book come out? I need to check that because I probably should wait to make that video until that fourth book comes out, surely. Maybe? Or maybe it will help people who are also 3 books in. I don't know. And then I am back on reading review copies. I think I'm going to try and prioritise this just because I'd love to get it out of the way so that the rest of the week I can focus on the rereads, which is what I really want to do at the moment. And that is The Hemlock Queen by Hannah Whitten. This is the sequel to The Foxglove King? Or is it The Hemlock King and The Foxglove Queen? I can't remember, but the cover will be up, so you don't need to worry about it. I started this, I haven't got very far into it, so I haven't added it to Storygraph or anything yet, but I am going to try and blast my way through this. It's like a dead people book. There's a lot of accidental necromancy theming in my reading at the moment. It is what it is. I don't know if you can tell, I'm not like super pumped to read this. I'm just trying to kind of get it out of the way because I've got some really exciting stuff that I do want to read. So yes, books added to my TBR. I have continued to be pretty very good about what I'm requesting. So I only have 2 things to tell you about. But they are books that I was going to read anyway, so it's fine. The Sword Unbound by Gareth Hanrahan. This is the sequel to The Sword Defiant. I'm not going to worry about a reread of The Sword Defiant because I read it this year, I think. Certainly recently enough that I can remember what happened. I'm really looking forward to diving into this. It's a little bit of a chunky one, but I think it'll be on the cards very soon. And then, very, very excitingly, I have Jenna Lyon's latest book, Sky on Fire, which is her new Dragon standalone. And it just looks absolutely fantastic. I'm really excited to read this. All of the stuff on my shelf I'm really hyped for, and I just need to get through the stuff that I'm not so hyped for in order to get to that stuff. That's the mission. Last thing we need to talk about is new releases. This week has a couple, one of which is The Sword Unbound. So I am late. I'm late on everything at the moment. I used to be a read everything 3 months early. It hasn't happened with this. But that will be out by the time you're watching this if you want to read it. And also The Brides of High Hill by Nevo is going to be out as well. Check your pub dates because mine might have changed since I wrote this list, but Brides of High Hill, latest book in the Singing Hills cycle. Just wonderful. I really enjoyed it. It's very different from the other books in the Singing Hills, in my opinion, but that's not to its detriment. It's wonderful. Thinking about storytelling, thinking about folklore, thinking about characters existing in a folklore almost. A great time. If you have been around the channel, you know I've loved pretty much every single book in the Singing Hills cycle, and I'm really glad they keep producing them. So yay, read it so we can have more. I'm pretty sure that's everything that we had to talk about this week. The rest of my time has been largely occupied by... What have I been doing? I've been playing Assassin's Creed Origins because I got it in a sale, and I am enjoying it as much as I enjoy any Assassin's Creed game. I have been playing a game called Potion Master, Potion Brewer, which I'm really enjoying. It's a very quirky little puzzly game. What else I feel like I should have had other interests in the last week, but I really haven't. I've been seeing friends. I think that's what it is. I've been hanging out with people, folks, doing stuff. That's what I've been doing. And also cutting off all my hair again, because that's the cycle. I let it grow out and then I cut it off again. We're at the cutting it off again stage. What have you been reading? What have you been up to? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're commenting, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. You can also come hang out on Discord, where we have chill chats about books. I'd like to say an enormous thank you to all the ghosts who haunt me over on Patreon. They support the channel and in return get early access to videos, bonus content, live streams, and more. If you'd like to join their number, that's linked below as well. Thank you so much to you for watching. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one.
There's gonna be some bloopers now.
Can I find all the stuff I meant to be talking to you about? Absolutely not. After that, I'll shuffle, actually, because Editing Judah's probably having a time fitting the covers in. What should we do? We'll order it this way. This one I finished first.